So a good while back, when I was going through like this really, really devastatingly hectic drought of romance and other associated things in my life, I used to ask myself on the daily, why am I not wanted? Like, who wouldn't want me, and why have I not been wanted? Hello, Coco, sorry, why have I not been wanted for the longest time? I mean, think about it. I'm smart, I'm emotionally intelligent, apparently I'm good looking, apparently, I don't know, it's something I heard namangas. I'm independent, I'm somewhat cultured. Oh, and fun fact, I am hella domesticated. Have you tasted my Hawaiian butter chicken stew? Oh, my boy. You know, I just seem to be all these things, and yet when I go through my romantic track record, it's a mess. It's naughty goody. It's naughty goody. And obviously, since that dry spell, I have been involved in a couple of interesting relationships and vibes and things of that nature. And that has not improved the state of my romantic track record. So, yeah. Sonbanani, Dumelang, Abusheni, hello. I'm literally the Joan Clayton of my squad. Like, I'm that chummy whose friends always be like, oh, so you went back to him, I'm that chummy who's always bringing a partner that the rest of the squad doesn't like. I'm that chummy who leaves the club when the man leaves the club, which is so weird because I love groove, dog. I am the chummy in the squad who has these like hyper-conscious superpowers that enable me to sense any person that may be speaking or touching my man in an unholy way, causing me to glide across the room and roll up on them on some.
I'm all about that. That's how life. And keep smiling because I'm waiting for you.
Operative word in that sentence, hyper-conscious. Not insecure, just in case that was in your mind. Hyper-conscious. I'm that chummy in the squad that's always forcing the rest of my friends to help me do social mathematics about how a certain text that was sent on the 18th of July 2018 does not correspond with the behaviors exhibited in an Insta story before Instagram took our Insta stories away on the same day 8 months ago. So because of my romantic track record, I'm always subjected to jokes like LGBT stands for let go by Thursday. Romance and carnal experiences, trauma, as well as the politics of being is what I'll be talking about in part 1 and part 2 of this episode. I made this episode for one reason, and really one reason only: to do the work necessary in order to be the highest version, or to actualize myself into the highest version of myself as possible. And so I want to emphasize that making this episode is not a mark of completion in doing that work. Rather, it's a tribute to the person that I was. It recognizes the person that I currently am, and it celebrates and brings closer the person that I deserve to become. So to kick off this episode, I want to start by defining a couple of terms that I'll be using throughout part 1 and part 2. Please note, my wonderfully reasonable viewers, that these terms and the definitions thereof have been reformed and refashioned to better suit my experiences and the articulation of my experiences. So please, angifuna ukuzwa nywe about conceptual accuracy and what term is used to define what, and what term belongs to what field, and it was defined by this person in 1987 et al. I don't. Ningasusa umsindo ngento engivele bengicacisile. So these injuries or traumas presented themselves in 3 different ways or patterns. The first pattern was the occurrence of these like instantaneous and passionate bonds. I'm telling you, nobody knows love at first sight the way that I do. Nobody. Love at first sight was me. I was love at first sight. Me and love at first sight were each other. Like, for example, one of my former loves of my life I met at the Great Dane line. How fitting. Like, the queue was long, the queue was not moving, the bouncers were hella, people were trying to push in, we were frustrated, and then we turn around to each other and we complain to one another, and then there was like 20 straight minutes of just banter and roasting each other. And then I whip out my nip that I made in a little like DIY incision that I made in my jacket, and I share it with him because, you know, you gotta carry a nip. You gotta carry a nip. You got to carry a nip. And then a couple of days later, we were literally in a relationship. Not a vibe or a pre-dating phase or whatever it is. We were in a solid relationship. We saw gold and we went for it. Another one of my former partners, I met when he gate crashed a dinner that I was having with me and my girls. So he was sitting at another table and he was constantly like turning back to our table. And I'm thinking, okay, probably like once one of my girls that I'm rolling with. And then he comes to our table. He asks if he can join us. Obviously, he bought us a round of drinks because you can't just come empty-handed. You know what I mean? And then initially, like, he was speaking to everybody. And then very quickly, he shifted his attention to me. Same thing. Couple of days later, we were in a relationship. Not a vibe, not a pre-date phase. We were in a relationship. Gold, me, him, went for it. So it is this very kind of pattern in the initiation of my relationships that has played out over and over and over again. The second significant way which these injuries to the self or traumas would show up is via the kind of person that I would be with. So, as previously defined, my type. There was a pattern, a distinct pattern in the kind of person that I would be with, especially when there was that strong instantaneous connection that was made initially. So often they were bigger than me physically. They had more money and they were just like financially more stable than I have ever been. Their dominance was assumed. And because their dominance was assumed, questions and discussions and engagements about roles were never engaged. These were also men that had this thing about them that let me know that they were not necessarily in touch with their emotional and metaphysical selves. They just had a way of rationalizing and compartmentalizing their emotional experiences and their metaphysical experiences in ways that were just not sustainable and not healthy. And me being the sensitive Sally that I am and occupying the opposite side of, you know, the emotional spectrum, the imbalance caused a lot of turmoil and conflict and disagreements and walking out on whoever and slamming off doors and saying hurtful things and just a lot of bad behavior. I just need to make a note that my previous partners were not necessarily all of these things all the time. The third and probably the strongest way that these injuries to the self or the traumas would show up via the pattern was through my own behavior and my own conduct. One of the patterns in my behaviors, I noticed that I became dangerously docile. And being docile doesn't mean being less loud or less boisterous. Docility is so deep that when I was going through it, you could literally tell that there was a significant shift in my energy. I would walk into a room or I'd be chilling with my squad and they could tell when I was in a relationship, when I was just like this. Self-control and self-surveillance become almost natural impulses. I watch, pay attention, and mind everything that I do, everything that I am. I watch what I dress. I watch what I'm saying, how I'm saying it, to whom am I saying it, where I'm saying it. I watch where I go. I watch what I eat. I pay attention to the way I listen and interpret information. And it's not to say that I was with men who had control issues or had issues with their sense of security that they would then project onto me or the relationship. But instead, I realized that men, particularly my type, they would approach me with an idea of who they thought I was. And that particular idea thrilled them. But more so the idea of being able to be with me, to handle me, to have access to me in ways that only being romantically entangled can make possible. And then they get into a relationship with me, and all the things that made me wonderful in their minds is all of a sudden a point of contestation. In a comfortable 90% of my relationships, I have been told,
don't act like a superstar. Don't treat me like a fan. You know, I'm proud of your achievements, but I don't want to discuss your work. You're being dramatic because the way things are works for us. Not everything has to be deep and political. Just chill, dog. Hoop earrings? Interesting.
This isn't me blowing my own horn, giving myself a shout out, putting brownie points into my own bag. If you know who you are and you're real with yourself, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And so because I'm used to being with the same kind of man, and that same kind or type of man has been literally inscribed into like my existential muscle memory, subconsciously, I respond to such behaviors from the people that I'm romantically involved with or from my type by being that version of myself that has been pre-approved in his mind. So being in relationships for me, in retrospect, it's been like doing these like hectic, long distance trips between my super self and the absence of myself, and my real actual self is my real actual self is nowhere to be found, nowhere to be identified, missing. Put posters up, we're looking for Lelo Macheke, the living legend. And obviously doing these like long distance trips between my super self and being in the absence of myself, or like my not real self, was not sustainable because I could never beat the lover that was in his head. Could never beat him. Another thing that happens when I become involved romantically with my type is that I become like hell-bent on wanting to belong or wanting to feel like I belong to my person. You know, to be bound, to be glued, to be annexed to my partner and his universe. That was the most important thing for me because that was like a stamp of validation of my own existence and my own worth. And so because I have made it my life mission to sign over the rights to my self-value and self-worth to my partner, I do anything and everything it takes to preserve the relationship. Which leads me to my third and last pattern. So up until recently, before I started embarking on this wonderful journey of, you know, reflection and healing and stuff, I was the queen. K-W-E-E-N. Queen of taking people back. What? Oh, my boy. Our earth, Nazi, on my emerging unibrow. I invented taking people back. And you know, I used to rationalize and justify taking people back. I used to say to myself, yazi angifuni ukuthuna umuntu engimthandayo. Kakhulukazi umuntu ovele belimele noma obephazamisekile emoyeni wabo ngaphambi kokuthi angene kulobu budlelwane. And how I discovered that taking them back had more to do with me than it had to do with them or the relationship. I used to take people back even when they didn't ask to be taken back. I used to offer to take people back. Imagine Offering to take someone back. Where have you ever heard? But I used to take them back because taking them back for me and my then warped conceptions of romantic justice, I was cursing everybody that didn't love him enough, that couldn't love him enough in ways that I thought that I could. Wow, okay, I'm sure this has been a lot for you guys to take in, as much as it has been a lot for me to kind of revisit all of this. So what I think I'll do is that ngizayibamba lapho namhlanje, and we will wait for part 2. And part 2 is more of a meaning-making episode. So I'll be discussing what the injuries or the traumas were, where they came from, or how they were caused or inflicted, why those relationships manifested the way that they did, what those relationships taught me about myself and about what I believed about myself. But most importantly, part 2 of this episode will be a look into, you know, the healing and the recalibration process, and just expressing some of my anxieties regarding love, regarding myself, and things of that nature. So you guys know what to do. If you liked this episode, click like, subscribe, share, and comment, please. If you did not like this episode, click like or dislike, subscribe, and share. Thank you so much again for watching. Bye.